the way I would frame this is I grew up with whitetails. And so I'm an ambush guy. That's what I know. That's what we have. So when I go spot and stalk mule deer, which is probably my most enjoyable time in the outdoors out of anything I do, it's like I know I'm going to screw up almost every time. And I have low standards, buddy. And when I get out there and I see, a buck bed down or there's, whatever feeding there, there's like a 95% chance when I start crawling, I don't kill that deer. And I don't even get a shot, but it feels so good because you know that. Like when you get in there and you get in closer and you're like, this is going really well. And all of a sudden those cattle get up and they run away and they blow them out, or the wind changes, or you just, you get yourself into a position where you lose them for a little bit and you go, oh, he's gone. He stand up and he was right there. All of that stuff is so good for you, like you're talking about.
Oh yeah. I mean, just soaking up all those experiences, man, like knowing, and that's, what you're saying right there. I think it really, is great. You go into a hunt with realistic expectations, right? Like be honest with yourself, right? If you've, another thing I look at is like, if somebody, has maybe killed a couple forkies, or maybe not even killed a deer for that matter. Okay. That's totally fine. You can't, I don't think it's like justifiable to like go into that situation, like being like 180 or bust, you know what I mean? Like, and I see, I've helped out on some youth hunts, and for anybody that's never done that, if you ever get a chance to do that, like that is awesome. You're framing the hunters of the future. It's really cool. But some of these kids, man, like, dude, they come in, they're like these little tykes, and they're like, I'm not shooting a buck that's under 150. I'm like, really? Like I remember being like a young kid. I would have killed to shoot a spike, right? Like, but and who knows? I don't know if that's because of their dads or what or the media they're watching. I'm not totally sure, but I think you need to be like honest with yourself about stuff, and just be like, let's work up to that, like there's nothing wrong with wanting to shoot a 180-inch mule deer. Who wouldn't want to do that, right? But it's like, okay, never killed a deer. Maybe I'm going to go out and I'm just going to take whatever opportunity is given to me. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's going to you're going to get so much of that from that. Right. You're going to like have the experience of crawling. You're going to have the experience of like watching the deer's eye or something like that. You know what I mean? Like putting something in between the deer's eye and working that situation, watching the deer's mannerisms. Like when they flick their tail, they're going to lift their head oftentimes. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, and reading the deer, coming to full draw, knowing what it's like with your pin on an animal. Like that's completely different from a block target,
Big time.
And, shooting the animal, hearing that sound, that thwack, like everybody talks about, like, I think that's so valuable. And then cutting the animal up, and you just get so much out of it, and so I think, you shoot a forky, and then maybe next time you shoot a 3-point. Okay, maybe next time I want to shoot a 4-point, right? And they just kind of like go down the line like that. I think that's like the best way to do things.
I think it's the best way to build a lifelong love for this stuff.
Yeah.
I think the struggle's real important, but I think the success is too. And I think when you set the parameter so high or the bar so high that you're not going to succeed, it's just a recipe for failure.
I think the struggle breeds appreciation. Like when you put so much into something, and then finally after, whatever years, months, whatever it is, after all that, then you finally fill your tag or whatever. It just makes you appreciate all the work before that. And it makes you appreciate the animal more. Like, I think some people take these critters for granted, like they think that they're stupid or something like that. Like, and in all reality, it's like, no, man, you got to give it up. Like my dad shot a deer last year, a coos buck that we deemed to be about 8 years old. That's an old coos deer. Okay. Like, so you think about a coos deer, everything wants to eat a coos deer. Okay. All of the hunting seasons, all of the lions, the bears, whatever, that are trying to eat that deer. You got to have respect for that, man. Like he made it to 8 years old. That's a smart animal. He got that old for a reason. And, the fact that we got an opportunity to bring him home, that was just like, it was so much more. That was way bigger than the deer was. It was a big deer, but like it was way bigger than the deer was.
Yeah. Was that a rifle kill or a bow kill?
That was rifle. Yeah, okay. My dad drew a October rifle tag. So he was actually, this deer I've had on camera for goodness gracious, years, which is how we knew how old he was. But he never went past a 2-point. He was just like a big super 2, big long eye guards. He ended up being like 95 inches as a 2-point. So like, yeah, just nice. Yeah, really nice deer. So
that's pretty cool. Is Coues deer the toughest?
I think it's arguably, like with spot and stalk with a bow, I think arguably it's the toughest but there are guys though that live here in Arizona. We kill Coues deer every single year with a bow. You know what I mean? So you got to ask yourself the question: is it the hardest? Are you thinking like it's the hardest compared to everything else in the country, or is it like the hardest in the state of Arizona? And like for somebody that's used to it, it's normal, right? Like that's how they learned how to spot and stalk hunt, was Coues deer hunting. Yep. You know what I mean? And like that's how they learned how to glass. I feel like if you come out and you learn how to glass for Coues deer, you can glass anything.
Yeah, I've heard that. I asked that. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question because we're like the hunting community is obsessed with like what's the most badass thing out there, like what's the hardest thing to do, and it's just, again, it's like so situational. Yep. I mean, for somebody who's never spotted, stalked anything, probably going to Arizona to spot and stalk a Coues deer might be that's probably way, 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 way up there. But like you said, if that's what you grew up on, and if you did that, you might go into a situation in the North Woods of Michigan or something and not be able to find a deer for a week. I mean, it's so, they're so different. And so I was just curious to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, dude. Like they are wiry, like 100%. Like it's almost laughable sometimes. Like I've watched them literally jump like a cat, like a scared cat from a gust of wind. I mean, they are on edge. But it's really, I think what it comes down to is like, it's like experience, you know what I mean? And like recognizing the right opportunity. Like, so this past January, I had a couple of friends from Idaho come down to hunt Coues deer, and we went to southern Arizona, just saw a ton of deer. It was an awesome time. But they had never hunted Coues deer before, and they heard the legends, right? Of like, oh, it's so difficult. It's the hardest thing in the world. Well, we get to this spot in the evening. I glass up a buck down the bottom of this drainage, and he is absolutely fixated on a doe down in the bottom of this cut. Like love struck. Didn't take a step for 45 minutes. Okay. I was like, I think he's a basket rat Coues. I'm going to make a run at him. I went down there and just literally went down there, got there in 12 minutes, popped up over this ridge and just shot him. But then for the next 9 days or 8 days, my Idaho buddies just like got their butts handed to them. You know what I mean? So it's like seeing the right opportunity. I think that's another thing. Like these guys that are successful year in and year out on hunting Coues deer with a bow, they know what to look for. Like a situation where you got like a hot doe, like that buck's not going anywhere, right? Or like a lone buck in the early rut, that he's not traveling too much, but he's broken off from the bachelor group. That's a great deer to go after because you're not trying to stalk into a group of, a buck with like 15 does with them. That's a lot of eyes, man. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, that story there, I think that's an important one for people to hear, because the one thing that I think is so appealing about spotting and stalking, especially in a state with a ton of public land, is it's only your fault if you're not in the game. And so, and that doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's your fault if you don't succeed every day or, kill something every day, because that's a different thing. But to be in the game is a matter of how much are you willing to work. And that's such a beautiful thing about that. So you take something that's as challenging as bow hunting Coues deer, If you have 10 days, you're going to get your shot probably, or get a chance to be in the realm of a shot, which means you're in the game. Just keep going. And I think it's a hard thing for a lot of whitetail hunters to understand, because, you know, if you're hunting a small property and it just goes cold for whatever reason, you don't have a whole lot of options. You just wait for it to get better and don't hunt a lot of times. It's not like you can go cover a bunch of ground if you're only hunting 20 acres. And that freedom of big country and even low density animals like elk in a lot of places, at least you can go try to make something happen. And that's such a good thing to have during a trip like that, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it really, like what you said about like how much work you want to put into it. Spot and stalk hunting, man, that's really the key to like getting opportunities, in my opinion. You know, if you try enough, you're going to eventually get to full draw, you know. But if you sit back, like when I first started, you know, trying to spot and stalk deer with my bow, I would oftentimes sit back and glass and I would overthink the situation, you know. And it's like, in all reality, if I was standing right over there right now, I'd be able to shoot that buck. Okay. So like, okay, it's, you know, it's not as easy as that, but that's the truth. So how do you get over there? Make a plan. Like, don't be afraid to bust animals. Like if you're not busting, like we want to scare as little animals as we can. Right. But I feel like if you're not busting animals, you're probably not trying, or you're like the best spot and stock hunter in the world. Right.
Yeah. So. I mean, I've seen that so many times where people are very conservative when they go spot and stalk. And I watch this, you know, the most experience I have spotting and stalking is Western North Dakota for mule deer. That's where I've done it the most. And what that country is really breaky. And so it's not a high country basin where you can get up on a hog's back and you go, okay, there's $4 here, $6 over there. If these guys bed, I can get through these, you know, get around these pine trees or whatever. It's not a simple situation to sit back and glass and bed one. Mm-hmm. So you do a lot of sneaking around, peeking into draws and coulees, and you might pick one up on his feet feeding, or you might catch one bedded, but it's a different kind of thing. And a lot of people I saw show up there, they go, this is a mule deer hunt. I'm going to glass till I bed one, then I'm going to go. And situationally, that just doesn't cut it there. You might have that happen once in a while, but to count on it, what you do is you just waste time and you waste time and you waste time. And the reality there is, you know, when you're on a basin, those deer, you know, they might disappear into a patch of cover, but they're in that patch of cover. In that breaky country, they walk up over the ridge, they are gonzo out of your life. And you just, you know, you might have spent 4 hours sitting on that deer and now the whole thing changed and you might not ever pick them up again. And so it's, you know, going into those situations, knowing what you're dealing with and how to be proactive enough to make it happen is real important.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, what you just said about that breaky country, man, like a lot of Arizona's like that. There's a lot of folds. So you're not like, you know, hunting high country mule deer or something like that. You're looking at this giant basin and you can watch a deer for hours, just walk around the whole thing, bed down, get up, go to his second bed, just like he's supposed to. Right. But like in the country that's like, I call it the spig noodles on a topo map. Okay. So in that type of country where it's up and down, up and down, up and down, man, a deer can disappear in a hurry, you know? So if you glass up a buck and he's, you know, rutting a doe or whatever, you know, it's like more times than not, people argue with me about this all the time. But like when I, like during that later season, during the rut, because things are so chaotic, oftentimes I glass up a buck and I'm like, okay, which way is the wind going? Which general direction are the does going? I'm gone. Like I'm not like I'm out. I'm going to go make a play, you know, and because if you sit there and wait for that deer to go bed down, you're probably not going to see him bed down, you know, like I could probably count on one hand how many times I watched that happen, like actually watch the deer bed down. But more times than not, they're traveling, you know, it's a cloud of chaos in all these little folds. And it's like, if you don't put yourself in that party, you're not going to experience it.